The villain to hero trope is a very popular literary device that tons of narratives fall under, but perhaps the most prominent examples from this generation are Gru from the Despicable Me franchise and Megamind from, well, Megamind. Both of these stories revolve supervillains who start out as outcasts, but eventually throughout the film, they're eventually brought into the light. So narratively, these guys have a lot in common. Both of the movies came out around the same time, and both of these guys are very tech-savvy individuals, with numerous minions, guns, ships, and tons of other things in their arsenal. So seeing as how both of these IPs are relevant at the moment due to the Megamind sequel, in quotes by the way, and the fourth installment in the Despicable Me franchise dropping later this year, I don't think there's a better time to discuss this matchup. Personally, I love to talk about a wide variety of media and characters, so if you're a fan of the usual content but want to see more characters on the channel, be sure to like the video up to show your support for topics like this. And hey, if you're new here, we post shorts every other day as well as main videos every Friday, so if you want consistent content from me on your feed, I got you. To set up the stage for today's topic, let's say that upon Metro Man's quote-unquote death, Megamind has effectively been running amok throughout the city, and with Metro Man gone, the city's effectively defenseless. The anti-villain league catches this and assigns Gru to take down Megamind. As a former villain himself, and the guy who really stole the moon, they determine that he's the best guy for the case. So this will be an in-character encounter, so Megamind has access to all of his main assets, and Gru gets all of his gear as well as a couple of minions to back him up. Could Gru put away Megamind for good? Or Megamind needs to remind everyone why he's the new ruler of Metro City. So without wasting any more of you guys' time, let's get into today's matchup. Seeing as how you guys loved the last video, let's start off with Megamind. Alright, so obviously Megamind's main stuff is his tech, but don't let that fool you as he does have some physical things that we're gonna have to talk about, such as his durability and speed, because the speed at which he shoots and uses his devices is something that's gonna be very important, especially against someone as surprisingly agile as Gru. So let's get right into that. Megamind for his physical AP feats pretty much has nothing, as you would expect. He's kind of displayed to be kind of scrawny and weak physically, which isn't really surprising that given that his entire character is that he's a super genius and that his brain is a superpower. So let's talk about his base technical capabilities. As Megamind puts it, there are villains and then there are super villains, with the difference being presentation. So Megamind has a lot of inventions that I like to call popcorn tech, where they just seem to boost up his aura and stuff. They're not really combat applicable. Gear that seems to fit into this category are things such as his black mamba, which is literally just a cape, but it's a pretty nice cape to be fair. He also has his brain bots, which can seemingly create massive thunderclouds throughout the film, and he can also use them to create huge projections of himself, which is something most infamously used at the climax of the original film. These guys seem to be mostly show as they haven't really shown any real technical offensive options, but they can be used as getaway options for Megamind if he finds himself in a tough corner, such as showcased against Titan. But for more offensive options, we have to talk about his mace spray, which has been shown to knock people out unconscious. He also has his forget-me stick, as he calls it, which is literally just a black bat that he uses to knock people out. Obviously this stuff is pretty poopy, not gonna lie, but for actual useful offensive options, let's dive into the Megamind game, where he has his Tesla glove, which can fire electricity, which Megamind uses to stun his opponents, and he also has his blower glove, which can be used to knock enemies around. But Megamind's most infamous offensive option is his D-gun, which has multiple settings that I will put on screen here. While a lot of these options are very useful, Megamind seems to cling on to the dehydration effect, which turns his opponents into cubes after sucking up all their water. I want to take this time to talk about Megamind's wide variety of capabilities, as I think it's pretty notable. One instance of this would be him turning the Atlantic Ocean into jello, which is a multi-continental feat. He can also create huge constructs that can encase entire cities and shoot them into space, with the kinetic energy of these said constructs getting into the gigatons. Massive shout out being to Comic Book Myths, by the way, as he gave me the calc for that. So if you're interested in, the math of these things, be sure to give his channel some love. But anyways, his most powerful weapon seems to be his Death Ray, which notably harnesses the full concentrated power of the sun. And if we were to lowball and say that the beam was equivalent to 1 second of the sun's solar output, the yield of this blast would be equivalent to around 91 petatons, which is more powerful than 1 billion SAR bombs. But for more conventional battle weapons, he has numerous mechs such as his Megamind, as well as his battlesuit, which he uses against Titan, in which he honestly did a pretty decent job of showing relativity to him, being able to hurt him, fight on par with him, and stuff like that. Titan is a character who has a small portion of Metro Man's power, with his most impressive feat involving him literally throwing a skyscraper, which gets into the city block ranges. Megamind has also designed a Metro Man inspired suit that was meant to replicate all of his powers. Though I want to note, Metro Man spent his entire career against Megamind holding back, so the suit likely doesn't scale to Metro Man's higher end stuff, as Megamind is more than likely not very aware of it. But Megamind still has a very impressive showing in this Metro Man inspired suit, as he's literally able to chuck the Megamind into the air, with the calculations asserting that in this suit, Megamind can exert forces equivalent to 615 tons of TNT, which is enough power to destroy multiple city blocks. And yeah, Megamind has a bunch of other tech that isn't very combat applicable. Things that would fall into this category are his invisible car and hover bike, which, I mean, what am I supposed to say? He drives them. So let's move into Megamind's physical stats. Megamind as a cartoon character is kind of a reverse glass cannon. As glass cannons are characters who can't endure what they dish out, Megamind seems to be the exact opposite, as he can endure blows that are way above his physical pay grade. This would include strikes from Titan, a character who can no-sell Megamind's amped physical blows. He can also endure being in close proximity to a gas tank explosion, and in the comic book, he can also no-sell a large building level explosion. As for his speed now, Megamind is consistently faster than any real person, as he can fight on par with Titan in his mech suit. And while yes, Megamind's blows and durability were amped in the suit, he was still physically the one controlling and reacting to Titan during this encounter. Megamind throughout the film is also pretty consistently shown to be on similar speed terms as Titan, so it's not even inconsistent. Most impressively though, Megamind can react and dodge lightning from Doom Syndicate members, with this particular instance getting calculated to be in the massively hypersonic ranges. And while yes, Megamind has a feat where he can seemingly perceive Metro Man in an instance where they're both flying in crafts that are flying at speeds massively faster than the speed of light. But just because you can perceive something doesn't mean that you can react at that speed. We all can see lightning, but no one is dodging it, so I'd say consistently, Megamind is around the massively hypersonic ranges. Megamind overall is a genius with a very impressive arsenal of gadgets and tech, and even some sleeper physical stats, so overall, Gru's got some pretty deep competition. But before we make any conclusions, let's talk about Gru himself. While Gru from the Despicable Me franchise is very reliant on his tech and weaponry, the IP as a whole seems to be more out there with the main protagonist's inherent base stats, especially durability and attack potency. He can one-shot sharks and even shrug off their attacks. He can matrix dodge freaking missiles, and heck, he doesn't even need to get out of the way considering he was able to get hit with this and survive. And this is only stuff from the first movie, so before we talk about his technology and arsenal, how powerful is Gru exactly? And let me advise you guys, get prepared to get stupid because I promise you will be surprised. Alright, there's no more beating around the bush. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but the Despicable Me franchise is consistently in the large building to large town ranges of power. I know, it might seem crazy what I'm about to say, and honestly, it's still a bit of a hard sell no matter how consistent it happens to be. But despite this, let me go out of my way to talk about every major instance of Despicable Me characters that Gru should scale to, performing or just scaling to his level of power. Let's start off slow. During the climax of the film Minions, Scarlet Overkill is able to endure being slapped through multiple buildings, with a feat of durability that gets calculated to be in the large building ranges of power. I don't think anyone is going to argue with me when I say that Gru should physically be more powerful than Scarlet Overkill, so let's just move on to the next feat. And we're going to have to dive into the new short, Moon, that's all about Vector from the first movie. During the duration of this short, he performs a very impressive feat of attack potency. I can't show the clip because I don't think it's been officially released yet, but Vector was able to shake an entire crater on the moon. I don't want to get into the exact specifics of it due to fear of copyright, so in the link in the description, I have linked an entire thread of feats of durability and attack potency from the Despicable Me universe. I want to shout out this thread specifically, as because of it, I was able to find all of these feats. But anyways, Gru should scale above Vector physically for very obvious reasons. As for starters, he's implied to be able to beat Vector up during the climax of the original film, and according to the AVL fires, Vector is considered not a threat physically to any AVL agent, and that would include Gru. Using this line of scaling, we can get into Vector's other feats. As for starters, he was able to no-sell the force of being yanked onto a rocket ship, which is a feat of durability that requires almost 4 whole kilotons, which would put his durability in the small town ranges. And this is consistent as during the end of the film, Vector is able to no-sell the kinetic energy of the moon growing back to its normal size, and due to the calculations on screen, it's been asserted that he can endure 115 kilotons of TNT. To put this absurd level of power into perspective, the nukes that decimated Hiroshima and Nagasaki Nagasaki were around 16 to 21 kilotons worth of power, respectively. For more consistency, the minions during the finale of Despicable Me 3 were able to no-sell a gigantic wad of bubblegum popping on their faces. Considering that this chunk of bubblegum took up a large chunk of Los Angeles, the force of this pop gets calculated to be in the town ranges, and these guys no-sold it point blank. In a likely canon short to the Despicable Me franchise featuring these minions, a couple of them were able to survive a bomb explosion that caused an earthquake subsequently, which at bare minimum gets a small town, and at absolute highest gets decently into the megatons, or city level. We know that Gru scales to the minions physically and should likely be more durable than them, as he can fight amped minions, and he can send them flying with his kicks, and he's also shown to overpower them casually and toss them around. Keep in mind these purple minions can really arguably eat nukes and just sit there unfazed. We know that these weapons are nuclear as they have the ionizing radiation symbol on them, which would mean that at bare minimum this bomb right here is around building level to even small town level. And I think it's basic common sense that these purple minions are stronger than these yellow minions who have town to city level feats of durability. And Gru can just stomp them out and kick them around. And there's still some more feats that I don't feel like mentioning, but we went over 7 unique instances of building to large town ends of power that Gru scales to. Now, if it was 1 time, that's an outlier. If it's 2 times, that's a little weird, but 7 whole unique times, at a certain point, you just gotta accept it. Not only were these feats of durability really consistent, there's also really easy ways to assert that Gru can injure these characters as well. So in conclusion, the Despicable Me characters, or at least the major ones, have some sort of toon force going on. And I haven't even begun to cover their speed as well, because just like their attack potency, it's equally as ludicrous. A good benchmark of speed for pretty much anyone in the verse comes to us from Vector, as it comes to us from the New Moon short as well. Basically, in the middle of the short, Vector propels himself in an attempt to escape the moon, but due to its intense gravity, he finds himself just looping around it. The moon's equilateral circumference is around 6,783.5 miles, and due to Vector's endpoint compared to where he started, and due to the overall time that it took him to travel with this amount of space, and it's been determined that during this instance here, he was traveling at around Mach 8,287, or around massively hypersonic plus, a tier of speed that's just sitting barely below baseline relativistic, sitting at around 0.95% the speed of light. Now obviously Vector doesn't scale to this like travel speed wise, but his reactions certainly do, as while traveling at the speed, he was going to hit a huge boulder, and he quickly reacts by tossing a lasso around a rock while traveling around at the speed. So Vector, while traveling at 0.95% the speed of light, is able to react in real time to his environment and toss a rope quicker than he can continue to move. Gru is narratively faster than Vector, as he's shocked that Gru is able to dodge his missiles, granting Gru massively hypersonic plus even relativistic speed scaling as well. And just like the AP ends, it's actually kind of consistent in the verse, as you have Balthazar Brat is able to casually evade and react to laser type guns. And in Despicable Me 2, Gru has a feat where he's able to disappear into the background in the time it takes a light to flash, and then he's able to return in the time that it takes another light to flash. So Gru's around massively hypersonic to even probably more than likely relativistic plus. Okay, so with all that craziness out the way, let's talk about Gru's base tech and arsenal. While Gru isn't as smart as Megamind in my opinion, Gru is no joke a genius, as even as a child, he could create working rocket ships. He also presumably created his flying scooter for himself. So let's get into his technology and weapons. Alright, and this part's gonna be pretty simple, because since we scaled Gru's physical stats, we can just assert that all of his main offensive weapons are in that same range at the very least. So they should still fall into the large building to large town level in terms of like power. And since we're getting really crazy still, I have to address this. Attack potency and the destructive range of a weapon or a character aren't inherently intertwined. So when I say Gru has large building to town level AP, I'm not saying he can destroy a town with a single punch. That's just ridiculous. I'm just saying that his physical blows and his weapons would need to be outputting relative energy in order to be injuring characters who can no-sell that stuff. So starting off with his more chill weapons, Gru has a fart gun, pretty self-explanatory right there. Gru also has Lipstick Taser, which is notably shown to incapacitate an amped El Macho, a character who should be stronger than Gru himself. So Gru's weapon scaling above his own attack potency is pretty consistent. Gru's favorite weapon though is his Freeze Ray, which shoots a cryogenic laser that freezes pretty much anything in its way. The weapon is shot at minus 100 degrees, and it's also a laser, so that would mean that it's shot at the speed of light. And El Macho was able to block it, and Gru was able to evade him and stuff like that. So Gru being in that relativistic range is is just getting more and more consistent. But I mean, he actually just has lasers as well, so that's another light speed thing that he has. For higher end and more useful stuff, Gru has access to his father's villain suit, which grants its user sticky, camo, inflation, and a whole bunch of other things that he can use to, like, you know, evade things or sneak into places. He has x-ray goggles, grappling hooks, jetpacks, rocket launchers, as well as a variety of vehicles which can provide many offensive options. I mean, look at the firepower on this thing right here. Keep in mind, all of these weapons should scale to Gru's own attack potency at the very least. And most infamously, Gru has his shrink ray, which can shrink even such large constructs as the moon. But I want to point out that the effects are temporary, and all of the things shrunken will eventually return to the original size. But seeing as how a large construct like the moon took a couple of hours to get back to its normal size, I think it's safe to say that anything that's shot by this gun is going to be small for a minute. So overall, while Gru might not have been the greatest villain of all time or anything like that, with his physical stats, skill, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Gru was proficient in multiple forms of combat. Stack that on top of his loaded arsenal, his speed, and it's safe to say that anyone who gets on his bad side is going to find him quite despicable. So with that being said, who wins? And at first glance, yeah, the Despicable Me verse is very, very powerful. But I forgot to talk about some Megamind metas, so let's get right into that real quick. Alright, first of all, Megamind's higher end tech should scale relative to Titan, whose best feat is not throwing a skyscraper. His best feat is dispersing a large crowd of Megamind brain bots. And this feat comes out to around small town level, so that's pretty good, And if you want to use the novelization, Megamind does have an instance of him dodging lasers, right, according to the text on screen anyways. So using this, at least in terms of speed, they would be relative now, but there's still a pretty decent, you know, AP gap. And it's also the fact that Megamind in character isn't as evil as he seems to be. Like, Megamind's only real hope of incapacitating Gru would be utilizing his higher end stuff, such as his Metro Man suit, or his mechs, but let's just say that a Forget Me Stick's not gonna work on Gru. The only real piece of technology that Megamind has, right, in his base and uses pretty consistently in character that I think has a chance of beating Gru would be his dehydration gun. But the fact that Megamind never ever attempted to use it against Titan or Metro Man kind of gives me the impression that if you far outscale Megamind, it's probably not gonna work on you anyways. It's also the fact that Gru could just dodge it, being as fast as he is, but let's be kind to Megamind and say that's a win con base to base in an encounter such as this. But compare that one win con to pretty much like 5 win cons Gru has. He's physically much stronger, he's faster, more skilled, his tech is more versatile. All of his weapons should be pretty much instant win cons against Megamind due to the sheer gap in AP and such. But yeah, I think that base to base in an encounter like this, Gru would win, even though Megamind is smarter and his higher end stuff is probably more powerful. But I'm not gonna argue that Megamind in character is gonna, you know, use the death ray on Gru. I don't see him doing that. But now, if we gave Megamind prep time, that's where the conversation gets interesting. For our sort of alternate scenario, let's say that Megamind is informed of Gru's stats and capabilities and his versatility. I'm sure Megamind can make something that would be able to put Gru down, as that's how Megamind works more times than not. His brain is his superpower after all. So naturally, Megamind works a lot better when you give him some prep time. He has all the previously mentioned super suits. Megamind's got all sort of giant mechs that should be physically stronger than Gru, in my opinion, despite what the power scaling says. But let's not act like Gru's a slouch if you catch him on, you know, lacking. Gru's got a shrink ray, and he's got multiple flying vehicles with insane arsenals, and he's fought giant mechs before, so who knows. But yeah, in my opinion, if Megamind were to catch a win on Gru, he would need a pretty decent amount of prep time, because I think that in a base-to-base encounter, Gru is stronger, faster, and just every discernible advantage that isn't straight IQ. And even then, I'd say that Gru's battle IQ is much higher than Megamind's. So for all intents and purposes, today's winner is Gru from Despicable Me. Oh, and one minor thing, right? I remember a lot of people, when I put the poll up, were saying things like Megamind has world-threatening devices off the quote that I found from the art book. And I did some snooping around, and Gru has the exact same statement. So yeah, how'd you guys feel about today's video? I think it was pretty out there, and I had a lot of fun making it. You know, I'm always doing the kaiju and more battle-oriented versus matchups, but I enjoy kind of talking about the tacticians and the arsenals and the weapons and stuff like that. Kind of like my Planet of the Apes video that you guys also like. If you guys would like to see more battle analysis type videos like this, be sure to let me know in the comments, drop your matchups. And while you're down there, the comment of the week is Despicable. Dropping the comment won't only tell me that you're a real one, it'll also tell me that you're a fan of this type of content, and I'll be making more of it if I see enough support. But as always, I'll see you guys next week, but until then, stay big G fans.